From April 9th to the 21st, Prairie Theatre Exchange is presenting a one-woman play that is a beautifully meditative tale of loss and our own mortality. Based on the American novelist Joan Didion's Pulitzer-nominated autobiographical book, The Year of Magical Thinking, this play of the same name is Joan Didion's adaptation of her book. The play also draws on themes to come from her final memoir, Blue Nights. After 40 years of marriage to her husband, John Gregory Dunn, Didion recounts the feelings and emotions she dealt with after her husband's death just 1 month prior to their 40th anniversary. The writing is an exploration of the gamut of the emotions we feel after such a significant loss. Rather than being a downer, the writing is exhilarating. The New York Times describes Didion's telling of her story as an adventure narrative, and both the book and the resulting play have been hailed by critics and audiences around the world, with The Guardian listing The Year of Magical Thinking as being ranked 40th on their list of 100 best books of the 21st century. And here to tell us more about the play and PTE's presentation of The Year of Magical Thinking, I am joined by Monique and Carmen from Prairie Theatre Exchange. Hi, nice to have you both here.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Monique and Carmen, I'm going to just maybe start out, before we get to the actual play, can you talk about who Joan Didion was?
Joan Didion was an iconic American writer who wrote both fiction and nonfiction. Her bestseller was The Year of Magical Thinking. She recently died in 2021, leaving behind in such a volume of great political journalism as well. She was iconic.
Mm-hmm. And from my understanding is she wrote for Vogue, and she was a writer in that respect as well, right? As a journalist?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The play is about 90 minutes long, and it is only you on stage, Monique. It just seems so daunting and terrifying to me. How do you deal with the fact that you have to carry the audience through the show and the deep emotions that the story portrays? It really does seem like a test of endurance. Is it? How do you prepare for that?
Well, it's interesting because it was terrifying when I first thought about it. But once you get into the story, and it's such a shared experience, the story that she's telling to the audience, that and she just starts reliving her story, and I think it just kind of carries you, so it doesn't become as daunting.
The play was first performed on Broadway in 2007 with Vanessa Redgrave performing the title role. Have you seen that performance?
No, but I wish I had. I bet it was extraordinary. Vanessa Redgrave is a fabulous actress.
So
David Hare directed it.
Yeah. And so it sort of leads, I mean, when you're preparing for a role like this and you're portraying Joan Didion herself, how did you work it out? How did you and your director, Rodrigo Belfus, workshop it? How did that process work?
We did have a 2-week workshop in November where we were just discussing the tone and the vision that we had for our particular story. And although I'm playing a character, I'm not playing actually Joan Didion. I'm playing the character that Joan wrote based on her story. So everyone has a little bit of a different way of playing it. My personality and the way I approach things may be a little bit different. So there's certainly, the writing indicates a strong personality traits, but it's still a little bit of my own sense of who I am in it as well. So that's what we were discussing, and the vision of what we wanted the play to look like and the journey that she goes through in the 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk us through the play? How soon does it start after her husband's passing? And does the play move through time chronologically, or sort of does it deal with the stages of grief? Like if it had acts, how does it work?
Well, there are 9 scenes, and it's almost like 9 chapters. So during each chapter, they deal with, in some ways, all the stages of grief. What you mentioned, denial, bartering, acceptance at the end. So we see those stages of grief throughout.
Mm-hmm. I looked up the meaning of magical thinking. It's defined as the belief that the unrelated events are causally connected despite the absence of any plausible causal link between them, particularly as a result of supernatural effects. How does that pertain to the play? How does that play out?
Well, it's interesting because she refers to the year after John died as the year of magical thinking. It was a phrase that she learned while reading anthropology. Primitive cultures operate on magical thinking. So if we sacrifice the virgin, the rain will come back. If I keep his shoes, magical thinking.
There's also the equation of Joan Didion's daughter, Quintana, and her health problems. Can you speak about the health problems, and how does she make use of those in the play? How does that work?
Well, Joan became very involved in the treatment of her daughter as she was going through all these very odd and extreme diagnosis. She initially went to emergency, her daughter, Quintana, with a flu. It was diagnosed as a flu. Shortly thereafter, it went into septic shock, and she was in a coma. And then a little bit later, she had a fall, and they thought maybe the bleed into her brain could have been caused by the fall, or the fall could have been caused by the bleed. So, there's a lot of references to how Joan, or the character of Joan, navigates through all the medical terminology and the struggle that she had to fight for her daughter to stay alive.
Yeah, and all of this is happening just after her husband passed away?
It was 5 days at Christmas when her husband died, December 30th. He had a massive heart attack and died. And during that time, her daughter was in the intensive care unit. So they had just come home from visiting their daughter in the intensive care unit. In a coma, he has a massive heart attack that night.
So she's got all that on her plate.
All that on the plate. And it's interesting because when she tells the story, it goes back and forth in time. So it's not totally a reliable narrator of the story, but you see how it threads all together, and you see why she kind of flips back and forth from the past to the present.
One of the questions is asked by your director, Rodrigo, in the program notes that I was reading is, what does a fancy, rich white lady from New York have to say about suffering, really? And one of the points he makes is, well, actually quite a bit. It's this whole idea we all deal with loss. It doesn't matter what demographic you're in. And maybe that's one of the points of the show. Is that right?
Well, she certainly did live a privileged life. She certainly worked hard for it, but she was very comfortable financially. But it doesn't matter because pain is pain. And the unfortunate thing is we are all going to go through it if we haven't already, grief and loss. And I think it is a universal truth. So regardless of your financial status or the power that you may have in your career, it all hits us. Pain is pain.
And when working through it is another part of the process.
And it's funny because she often tries to press those emotions or memories away. And then she realizes that she needs to walk through the wall of pain in order to come out on the other side of acceptance and hope for the future. It's very unsentimental. I think that's what I love about her writing. It's John and her were certainly a great team and a wonderful partnership, but it's not a lovey-dovey kind of relationship. It's very, they were just excellent partners together, true life partners, but it's not overly sentimental, would you say?
No, she's one cool customer, as they say.
Yes.
She knows things. She wants to understand things. She really wants to understand things. That's how she kind of processes and deals with things. So when you have something like death that maybe doesn't feel logical in the moment, that's what she's trying to process. And the way that she did it was through writing, because that was her process her entire life.
Yeah.
Even when she was little, when she was about 5 years old, she always wrote to understand what she was feeling and the observations in her world. And I think that's what she tried to do with this unimaginable.
Yeah. So it's like
loss.
the book became occupational therapy for her, just sort of to work through the process.
Yeah.
And for many people, too, because that's one of the reasons why it is such a beloved and shared book, is because it does help people.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Joan gave words to people that how to express their grief, and you go a little crazy. You go a little crazy, and she allowed people permission to feel whatever you need to feel. Grief is a journey that none of us know until we reach it.
Yeah, yeah. As we're recording this, you've performed the play now a few times. How has it been going? And does the performance change from one night to the next for you?
Absolutely. Every night is different because I have different scene partners every night in the audience. We have a different audience. So sometimes people will laugh more. Sometimes they'll be more quiet. Sometimes I can feel people or see people, hear people getting very emotional and crying, and that affects how I feel and what's happening right on stage. It's a very powerful relationship that hopefully is formed throughout the play. I'm speaking to them at the beginning going, this is the stuff you need to know. I'm giving you a gift. This is important stuff.
Yeah.
But then you realize this character needs the audience to listen to her, and they help her. And then she starts asking them questions like, what am I doing here? What's going on here? And then you can feel the need for her to express this to the audience. And then it's a very cathartic.
So do you find yourself in different places on stage from one night to the next is when you're saying the text, or does that aspect change at all?
Well, it's still early days in the run, so I will be doing my third show in front of an audience. So it has changed even from the few times that I've done it, and it will feel very different tonight.
But it's not a question of changing your location on stage or anything. It's very much that part is set.
Yeah.
There's a documentary on Netflix called The Center Will Not Hold, and so that it's kind of metaphorically shown on our stage with Monique being mostly in this center area, which is kind of representative of the house that or the condo that Joan lived in New York City. So she is kind of there, and she kind of comes out of the center a little bit and comes back in the center, but she needs to be there.
Yeah.
But the emotional state can change. Like sometimes, again, in the stillness, I can feel people. Like either you see, and I can see their faces as well. Like,
so you're feeding off the audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Monique, I'm going to wrap up the conversation by asking, what do you hope audiences will take away from the year of magical thinking?
Well, I hope that they have discussions about grief and loss. I think we don't talk about it enough. I really don't. And I think there's this cultural thing that we have to be strong, that we're allowed a certain amount of time to grieve. And after that, people don't give it time. Either it's too painful as a friend or family member to talk to someone about it. But validating someone's pain, listening to someone, and allowing someone to feel whatever they need to feel is so important. And I think if people can walk away with permission to feel what they need to feel and express what they need to feel, then I think we've done our job.
It's worth it. And Carmen, how about you?
Like, I think when I've seen the show a couple of times and been in the lobby afterwards, people are kind of reflecting on someone that was close to them that's no longer with them, and kind of going back to that time. And I think, as Monique was saying, everyone's like, just get on with it, get on with it, get on with it. But these are people that have been very important in our lives for whatever reason, and so it's nice to be given that permission to go back and feel.
And sometimes it takes a while, right?
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
And ultimately, to let them go in order to live yourself. And that it's not a cold or callous way of thinking of it, but in order to live yourself, we have to let them go. We have to let them, we carry the love with us always, but we can't hang on to them.
It sounds just like a wonderful, wonderful play of the year, Magical Thinking. Monique and Carmen, thanks for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today about what sounds like a truly remarkable play. It's been great to see you, Carmen, again, and Monique, it's been great to meet you.
Lovely meeting you.
For our Classic 107 listeners, Joan Didion's play, The Year of Magical Thinking, takes place at PTE until April the 21st. For more details, visit PTE's website at pte.mb.ca or visit classic107.com and just click on our events tab. Carmen and Monique, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.